So, one, if you're truly pro-life, you actually want to be realistic about it and get the most things done. You shouldn't be supporting for the government to take people's rights away because that's an authoritarian and that's just taking women's rights away. But what you want to do instead is that what you want to do instead when it comes to abortion is you want to push for a cultural shift on abortion. It's not something you want the government to be doing. It's something that you're going to regret later because it sets a bad precedent if you are trying to get the government to do stuff that is not to help people but is more just to take people's rights away. Getting the government involved in healthcare is a massive mistake. So you might get some victories in the short term, but in the long term, eventually you're going to lose when it comes to trying to take people's rights away. The majority of people would want as much freedom as humanly possible. So if you want to actually accomplish the most long-term good, you want to push for a cultural shift on abortion. Because what I do acknowledge is ending abortion, you are basically ending a human life. I don't think it's fair to treat it as murder, because then you're trying to say that you're trying to say that by women choosing their own prerogative and choosing to have control over their body, you're trying to say that just for doing that, they're murderers, which I think is disrespectful towards women. So yet again, you want to do like a cultural shift. But so, and I confused myself by going back to a previous point. I need to go forward to make sure I keep concentrated. So I've said that why you don't want to push for the government to start doing things. You want to push for a cultural shift because you're more likely to accomplish things in the long term. What I mean by that, things that are going to be long lasting. Because eventually you're going to have other people in power that are going to undo all the progress that you think you've made. And in order to get progress that's long lasting, you have to be good faith. And then being bad faith just means that all the victories you think you get in the short term, they're all just going to be undone. What else is there?
Flowers never fade. Come at me! Back it up!
What do I say? So, ending abortion is ending a human life, but banning abortion completely is an extremist position. Now, what do I mean by that? In order to figure out the two extremes, because in politics, you always have to figure out about things about. You always have to think about what is on the left side and what is the right side. So what is the left-wing side? What is the right-wing side? Because it usually ends up being, are you more for freedom and liberalism, or are you for more control and conservatism? So the way you figure out extremes is you figure out what's the extreme on one side, and then you mirror the extreme on the other side. So the extreme on the liberal side, on the left's liberal side, would be having like 8-month abortions, which would be way too close to the point of birth, and then it's too recognizable for it being you're ending the life of a fully grown baby. So having 8-month abortion would be an extremist position. So on the opposite end, you apply the same logic on the right wing side, is that if you have banning abortion completely, that's also an extremist position. So I think the minimal amount, there's different numbers you can go by when it comes to being realistic on abortion that's fair and good faith, which is, you could say 6 weeks is the minimum, because a lot of women don't realize that they're pregnant in 6 weeks, right? So then, and the reason why you need to have it at least 6 weeks is because if you have a complete abortion ban, doctors aren't going to know. Doctors aren't going to know, when it's okay to have an abortion, when it's not, because there are going to be times where you do have to have an abortion to save the life of the mother, because the mother is guaranteed to die, like, you know. So, like, you need to have at least a 6-month abortion, at limit lowest 6-month abortion ban. So doctors allow for the women to know that they're pregnant, for them to have enough chance to have an abortion. Now, you've got to allow a little bit of extra leeway for women to realize that they're pregnant in order to have an abortion, which would be, I would say that you could either go with the minimal there, which would be having an extra 2 weeks, which would put it up to 8 weeks. And by the way, if I say, when we're talking about abortion, we're meant to be talking about in like weeks, not months. So if I accidentally say weeks instead of months instead of weeks, I mean to say weeks, just in case I do that. So you want to allow 2 extra weeks to put it up to 8 weeks, for enough time for women to have enough time to realize they're pregnant and stuff like that. And now my recommendation overall, if you want to go for the limit, how the limit you can ban abortion. And, with this as well, you do have to say that, you do have to have, you always could offer, well, you could and you could not, but for the most part, you want to say that there has to be certain requirements. Like, you have to have a certain reason to have an abortion. You can't have an abortion whenever you want, because you still got to understand that it is a human life you're ending. But my recommendation for the minimal you should realistically be asking for an abortion ban would be for 9 weeks. 9 weeks is the limit, because you've got to have an extra week for the women to have enough time to realize they're pregnant. Now, when it comes to the global norm and the European norm, the actual limit with certain requirements is actually a 14-week abortion bans. And then after the 14, I think it's like after the 14 weeks, then you pretty much have to have a really good enough reason. But for the most part, you're not allowed to have, or like, you drastically limit the ability to have abortion at 14 weeks, and 14 weeks is the norm. What else can I say on abortion? The next thing is my abortion. My pro. I gotta make sure I say pro-life instead of saying like anti-abortion, because even on the left they say that it's not pro-abortion, it's actually pro-choice, and on the right and on the conservative side it's not anti-abortion, it's actually pro-life. I kind of do disagree with the term pro-life, because I would say that to be fully pro-life in a term that makes sense, you have to be a lot more than just for the lives of babies during abortion. But anyway, that's a side thing. What's the next thing? So my abortion ideas. Pro-life ideas. So what I think you could do is you could create you're more likely to get this done in conservative-led states in America than in Democrat-run states. But what you could do is joint abortion centers, where if you have a center that's fully for like abortion, then you could have like pro-life offices where it's up to the people running the state with the building, what they want to do, how many offices they want. I would say that you'd want maybe like 2 or 3 pro-life offices. And so like if a woman goes into a woman, teenager, whatever, couple goes into the abortion clinic, they have the option, if they want, they can go to the left. Let's say the offices are for the pro-life offices are to the left. If they want to hear out some pro-life arguments on why they should keep the baby, then they can go to the left and go to the pro-life offices. And then if they don't, they can go to go through with the abortion. What's it called? Planned Parenthood, I think, is the thing. Is one of the things that's called. Like you can either go to then you can either go to the pro-life offices or you can go to the Planned Parenthood offices. And the other idea that I have is in some places in the world you've got like prayer facilities for abortion centers where you're not allowed to protest for pro-life too close to the building. Now, on one hand, people being too close end up being a nuisance because of the restrictions there, but it's still kind of like it's an idea that I have to fix that is you could have a chapel within the abortion clinic, and in this chapel then, instead of the protesters protesting outside the clinic, being too close, being a nuisance, instead you can allow them to pray for the lives of the souls of the babies in like a chapel room. Well, you can either have like a room that's just a room that you can go to like pray, or you can, like you see in, what has that been? I think it's in the Scrubs TV show. You had like a full like almost like a chapel room in the actual hospital. So those are my two pro-life ideas. So it's just like if you decide then that obviously that that you agree that banning abortion completely is an extremist position, or it goes too far because it's giving the government too much control. What you can do then compensate for having like a 9-week abortion ban is that you can have these ideas where you have pro-life offices within the abortion clinic, and then also having a chapel in that clinic then for the people to pray. So then instead of being outside, they can be inside praying instead of being outside. So that's my kind of way of looking at pro-life, looking at abortion. What is realistically the best thing to do. And I would say that overall, I am percentage-wise, I am like 75% pro-choice and 25% pro-life. Because yeah, so that's kind of where I stand. That's my values on the thing. I'm 75% pro-choice and 25% pro-life because I acknowledge that having abortion is ending a human life. But I do think that banning abortion completely, it goes too far, and it gives too much control to the government and sets a bad precedent, because what other like healthcare is the government going to control? It will go too far. Because like ideally you want minimal government intervention with medical care. Well, distracted, got distracted down in this stupid game. Yeah, you want minimal government intervention when it comes to medical care. When the government starts dictating what medical care you can and can't get in any particular area is too far. Now, as a leftist, as a liberal, as a progressive, damn it. Right there near the end, right, to tie up the video, and now I'm getting misplaced. As a liberal, I can't remember what I was saying. So the last thing I remember saying is minimal government as much as possible when it comes to government intervention. Okay, what I'll do is I'll try not to be too long doing this. So what I gotta do is luckily I'm on my PlayStation, so I can go backwards. I can record the gameplay and see what I was saying last. So I'm gonna do that quick. I'll be back. Right, that's what I was going to say. Is free healthcare, I think, should be the minimal that the government should be involved in healthcare. I believe that every country in a modern, liberal, secularist.
Better not touch Aunt Han's thing.
Yeah, I think every country should have free healthcare at the very least. I think that should be like the only thing that the government should be dictating for, should be helping out with when it comes to healthcare for the most part, because you want minimal government intervention. What do I call it? I call it like freedom of healthcare or something. I call it freedom of healthcare, having minimal government intervention with what we can do and can't do with our bodies. Should I cover that argument that bad faith actors do? They pretend as if they're liberal, but then they give arguments then to shut down the pro-choice opinion, because they're like, oh, don't tell me my body, my choice. If you were okay with the government doing this and that during COVID, and they're just like, well, yeah, if that did happen, that's a good point to bring up to to expose hypocrisy. And it's just like 99%. So in that case, 99% of the time, the side ends up being way more pro-worker, ends up being the left or the progressives, because we always celebrate unionization. We always want higher minimum wage and stuff like that. So just instead of using that talking point as a way to shut down debate and to like attack the left. Instead, it should be like, oh, well, yeah, that's a good point to make. There is a little bit of hypocrisy. And you need to kind of like push the left to make sure that they keep their pro worker stances. And that if that mistake ever happens again, you shouldn't be wanting the government to intervene with, you know, people's jobs instead of using it as a way to kind of like attack the left. Because ultimately you shouldn't, like, if you're a liberal, you shouldn't be attacking the left. You should actually be critiquing the left to make the left wing better. But my counter would be, it's not your body, your choice. It's her body, her choice. So that fixes that flaw anyway. And, you know, if that did happen, you should be exploring why did it happen. And the reason why some people, it's not all leftists, okay, that's a deception that they do as well, is that they take like a small portion of the left and they pretend as if it's the majority of the left when it's actually a small portion, like it's like a percentile of the left. And they in being vague on purpose, they make it look as if it's the entirety of the left. It's like, oh, everybody in the left was okay, people losing their jobs. No, that's not true. That's a lie. And it should be, and the reason why people were kind of like entertaining that idea, I even know like conservative voters that were like that. And the reason why that is because we thought that, you know, you weren't willing to get a vaccine to save people's lives, you know, but then people didn't know that the vaccine, I think the first vaccine did, but the later vaccines didn't stop the spread of the virus. So it's like it didn't warrant people losing their jobs if it didn't have anything to do with, you know, lowering the spread. But I think it was to do with like that herd immunity stuff. But the reason why people were okay with people losing their jobs is because we thought that, you know, you were putting people's lives in danger because we thought that the vaccine like stopped the spread of the virus. So like by not having the vaccine, you're putting people's lives in danger by going to work being unvaccinated. So instead of just shutting down the left, you should be trying to explore and to try and help the left to like fix a flaw instead of just using it to attack and discredit the left. And like I said, her body, her choice.